There are many challenging enemies and boss fights in the Shadow of the Erd Tree DLC. In my opinion, one of the coolest and most aesthetically stunning fights is Bayle the Dread, where this dragon comes and tries to yoink you out of existence. But I started thinking to myself, this is a hard fight, this is a challenging fight, but there's a question that needs to be answered. There is one big question that I know is on everybody's mind. I'm Bonfire, and I'm here to answer the question, can the Mimic tier solo Bayle the Dread using the worst weapon in all of Elden Ring? When I first found these Smith Script daggers, I was stoked out of my mind because I've been wanting throne-type weapons in this franchise for a long time, and so I was very, very excited when I found them. So after swapping up the build, making it my new main weapon, and getting them to plus 25, I said, let's take on the DLC. Unfortunately, though, these things weren't exactly getting it done. Now, you could say user error, which is very, very viable. I tried 2 or 3 different builds. I swapped up the affinity for the weapon a few different times, and the best thing I could find was probably a bleed build. So, with that, I said, let's take on the world again. Unfortunately, though, after all that work and spending even more larval tears to respec a few different times, I went from being stoked out of my mind to use these things to having the thought that maybe these are just straight up the worst weapons I've ever found in any FromSoft game ever. And that's where we are now, thinking, can the Mimic tier, an overpowered Spirit Ash, take on Bayle the Dread using bleed affinity Smith Script daggers? As a side note, if you figured out how to make these things good, let me know, because I want them to be good so badly. I want them to, but I just cannot figure it out. For a little more context as well, I'm using the Death Knight armor, as well as the Lord of Blood's Exaltation, the Claw Talisman, the Shard of Alexander, and the Arrow's Sting Talisman. Now, unfortunately, when I first went in and said, Mimic tier, do your thing, I forgot that I still had equipped the Lamenting Visage torch, which skill makes it so that you hold it up in front of you and swing it around a bunch, and it makes you less detectable. Now, as you can see here, did my Mimic tier want to fight Bayle the Dread? No. He just kind of ran around spamming that ability over and over again and didn't do anything. So we scrapped it and we moved on to another attempt. Now that we have that all sorted out and the Lamenting Visage is removed, we are free to let the Mimic tier do its thing. Now, as a side note, when you go into Bayle, if you're trying to summon any sort of ashes, whether it be Mimic tier or any other Spirit Ash, it's real hard to do it right away, because boy oh boy does Bayle not waste any time trying to just obliterate you. After finally getting the Mimic tier and Igor summoned just because lore, I want to give him his due. But once we got the Mimic tier summoned, I was curious to see a few different things from it. First off, because I have the Claw Talisman equipped, I was curious to see, is it going to actually utilize jumping attacks when fighting Bayle? Secondly, because I have the Scattershot Throw Ash of War put on my daggers, I was curious, is it going to utilize that? Because not only do those count as headshots, they build up the blood loss very, very quickly. So those are 2 things that the Mimic tier can do for itself. Also, the Mimic tier is plus 10, and I currently have my Revered Ashes up to plus 6. I haven't gotten those very high, so we'll see. If you watched my other video where I summoned in the Mimic tier to fight Rilana, just to kind of see how good the scaling with the Revered Spirit Ashes was, I was hoping this fight would be kind of the same. Even though Bayle is a harder fight, my Spirit Ash kind of clapped out Rilana? Man, that's sometimes hard to say. I keep wanting to say Renala, but Rilana. Yeah, if you watch that, it was really, really easy for the Mimic tier. I think it ended up poisoning it, and Rilana just kind of died through that effect. As you can probably see, the Mimic tier, if I wasn't close to Bayle, would oftentimes not fight it. It would sometimes try to run to me. As you can see here, it's not really doing anything. It's kind of just dodging the tail a little bit, even though there's no attacks going out. It also tends to use the scatter shot throw more so than the jumping attacks, which is fine and actually probably better in this case. For me, though, I was just trying to dodge, and dodge again. I was just pretending that Bayle was a wrench. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a Bayle. As you can see, though, it didn't take too long before the Mimic Tier and Igor ended up getting Bayle to Phase 2. Phase 2 is awesome. And this is where we were going to see the true test of my Mimic Tier's skill. Could it dodge things? Well, let's find out. And nope, it definitely did not dodge that. I don't know exactly how the AI works with the Mimic Tier. I don't know if it's programmed to dodge as much as we are. I know that's kind of just baked into us as Souls players. Outside of Sekiro and Bloodborne, it's kind of just dodge, dodge, roll, 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 dodge, roll. That's kind of what it is. The Mimic Tier kind of tends to just soak up damage left and right. I also cannot help but wonder, is the Mimic Tier taking it easy here? You've seen many spans of 5 to 10 seconds during this fight where it just kind of doesn't do anything. It just runs around, like I said earlier. I, on the other hand, am also running around, but am sometimes worse at dodging than the Mimic Tier. I don't know. Maybe it just takes after its thing that it's mimicking. In this case, it's mimicking someone who is not that good at actually dodging. Maybe if I was better at dodging, the AI of the Mimic Tier would be better at dodging too. Who knows? But it seems like we are coming up to the answer of our question very quickly. The Mimic Tier is almost dead. Bayle is at half health, and it's gone. Like any good experiment, though, you cannot just try once. So we will optimize more, we will find some better armor, we will do things a little bit differently and see what happens next. This is not the end of the Mimic Tier versus Bayle. This is not the end of this experiment. If you have any suggestions on how to make this terrible weapon better for my Mimic Tier, please let me know in the comments, because I want to see if we can defeat Bayle the Dread using this bad weapon and the Mimic Tier. Well, if you found this entertaining in any way, shape, or form, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss a video. I am always uploading videos like this, as well as tips, tricks, item location, boss guides, or Elden rants. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace.